Welcome back to All About Winning Daily Fantasy Sports. My name is Ty Patton. In this video, I will share the fantasy relevant numbers to identify the top running backs to target in Week 14 for your DFS lineup for the main slate. Before we unpack the Week 14 running backs, let's take a quick look back at the running back position in Week 13. In Week 13, these were the top 5 projected running backs: McCaffrey, Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley, Aaron Jones, and Le'Veon Bell. The actual top 5 scoring were as follows: Darius Geis from Washington with 30.70 fantasy points, Derrick Henry 27.60 fantasy points, Raheem Mostert from San Francisco with 26.40 fantasy points, Sanders from Philadelphia with 21.50 fantasy points, and Todd Gurley from the Rams with 18.50 fantasy points. Now, these top 5 running backs averaged 24.94 fantasy points. They averaged 20.8 touches, and that's carries and receptions combined. They accounted for 6 touchdowns. They averaged 120.4 rushing yards, and they averaged 1.20 fantasy points per touch. As with every position, I am always looking for value. With the running back position, volume is key, which can be identified by focusing on the following categories: snap percentage and touches. I've developed this chart, and I wanted anybody that's new here on my channel, I just want to go over this. And real quickly, first off, the colors. Green is obviously the best. Yellow is kind of middle range on the fence. And then red is obviously the worst. Now, obviously, in this category, you have McCaffrey in red in salary. We all know that Christian McCaffrey's not a terrible running back, but what this is these colors are in comparison for that particular category. As you'll see here, I've got 40 running backs listed total. Obviously, I don't have 40 that I'm putting in my player pool, but I mean, you can go to the next category and see what I'm talking about here. Touches, McCaffrey's in green with 25.83 touches per game, which is the most actually on the main slate this week. So I want to go over the categories real quick and the chart itself. By all means, if you want to screenshot this, pause the video. When I get down around 30, I will have to scroll up for you guys. I have one down there that I have in yellow, and we'll get to that when I get there. But the categories I have are obviously the name, and the ones in green are the ones that I'm targeting. The ones in yellow, I'm kind of on the fence. I'm watching ownership numbers and things like that, and I'll address that when I do my lineup building video tomorrow, where I take all the players that I've developed in my player pools, which come from my individual videos through the week, and I put them all together, build some manual lineups, build some optimized lineups, and show you guys my process, and hopefully we can put it together and do some winning on Sunday. But these categories are, of course, the name, their team, their salary. This is touches per game. How many touches per game do they average? That's carries and receptions combined. Their average fantasy points scored per game. How many fantasy points their opponent gives up to the running back position. What their opponent's rank is in comparison to the rest of the NFL. This is snap percentage. Now, this isn't snap percentage for the whole season. This is their snap percentage for the last 4 games. So if you have someone, well, I don't have him in, Jonathan Williams, he hasn't, his snap percentage in comparison is a 0. I had Mac in here, and yeah, I still do, but his snap percentage is going to be obviously very low because he got hurt 3 games ago. So this is the last 4 games, remember that. This is their total red zone. This is carries and targets. And this is their points per snap, with all things factored in: touchdowns, receptions, carries, fumbles, just being on the field, their snap percentage, and this is what it's worth per snap. And that's about it for the chart. If you have any questions, please drop any questions or opinions that you may have below, and I've reached out and actually in my videos, ask people if there's something you'd like to see me add or that might help you out. By all means, drop it below and I'll see what I can do for you. Now, utilizing these numbers from this chart, these are going to be the running backs that I'm going to target in week 14 and the reasons why. Number one, and I wanted to add a quick note too. I prefer to use 3 running backs in my lineup, meaning I'll obviously use the flex position for a running back position, and because I already have 3 wide receivers, and even in PPR on Draftkings, getting that combination of 3 wide receivers is difficult, let alone adding another one to them. And I feel that running backs are more consistent if you follow their touches and their snap percentage. You can key on the volume that they're getting. So when I use 3 running backs, I'm aiming to get 70 or more touches. That's what I want to get between those 3, and like the fantasy points per touch number that I gave you. If you take that times 70, puts you up around 90 fantasy points for a third of my lineup, which is where I want to be. So, with that being said, these are the running backs that I'm going to target in week 14 with the reasons why. Christian McCaffrey, 10,300. He didn't get it done last week. Still scored 17 fantasy points. He's the highest. They lowered him $200 this week. He's getting 25.83 touches per game, scoring 31.3 fantasy points per game. Atlanta gives up 23.6 fantasy points per game to the running back position, which is a DVP of 14. He's get 98% of the snaps. He's not in a timeshare. He's on the field, and that's the really good thing about McCaffrey. He's not game script dependent. Whether they win or lose, he's going to be on the field. He's going to have a role. Whether he's running the ball, catching the ball, he's going to be out there. This is his total red zone carries, which is the most out of any of the running backs on the main slate. And this is his points per snap. Now, his points per snap will be low with such a high snap percentage. He's still the highest scoring running back on the out of all the running backs on the main slate, all the running backs, period. The thing about McCaffrey that you need to think about is his price is really high, but what you're getting is a running back and a wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3 for 10,300. So you're getting 2 positions for the price of 1. Now, to get value, we need 31 points just to hit value. So we need him to be in the end zone a couple times, and that's the difficult thing with him. He didn't get it done last week, but he's gotten it done many weeks, and I want to have exposure to him. Like I said, he's game script proof. The total in this game is 47. So I think there's going to be some scoring back and forth in this game. Atlanta is a little bit more stingy versus the running game, but he's also used in the passing game. So I will have a lot of exposure to him. His ownership numbers, projected ownership numbers that I seen a little while ago were actually low, and that's based on what they call recency bias. People seen what he did last week. Oh, I spent 10,500. He only got me 17 fantasy points. I'm not doing that. That could be a huge mistake because this guy can break a slate. I learned a lesson in the middle of the season. I faded him. I believe it was the Jacksonville game. I thought it was a bad matchup for him, and he scored 51 points. I had some exposure to him, but not nearly. I was way under what everyone else was. And I tried to basically what I did was outthought myself, and he was my number 1 pick in my season long league. This year I had the number 1 pick overall, which is really odd. I think it's happened like 2 times in 10 years, and excuse me. So I'm going to be sticking with him, and I will be building quite a few of my lineups around Christian McCaffrey. Next up here in green, Leonard Fournette. He's 7,800. He's getting 23.75 touches per game, averaging 19.5 fantasy points per game. Um, he's getting 88% of the snaps. He's had 46 total red zone targets, and he's scoring .322 fantasy points per game. Now they're playing the Chargers this week, which which are giving up 27.1 fantasy points per game with a DVP of 24. So they're not really anything special versus the running back position. They're at home. The spread on this game is the Chargers are 3-point favorite at Jacksonville. Fournette is getting some targets this year, and he actually has had nine receptions actually in the last two games. So he's getting that with the carries. If this guy starts falling in the end zone a little bit more, he'll be smashing. He'll be scoring like in the 30s. It's just he's not getting the touchdowns to go with all that volume. He is a very nice savings off of McCaffrey, and with his snap percentage and his touches per game, he doesn't split carries with anyone either. And I will have some exposure to Leonard Fournette in my lineups this week. Next up is Le'Veon Bell. He's 7,200. He's getting 19.83 excuse me, touches per game. He's only scoring 14.9 fantasy points per game. The Miami Dolphins are giving up 29.2 fantasy points per game, and with a DVP of 29. He's had 69% snap percentage the last 4 games. 22 total red zone carries and touches, which is kind of low for the season, and averaging .325 points per snap. A little bit more efficient than Fournette. I like Le'Veon Bell. I'm not in love with that price, the 7,200. If you take that in comparison to his season fantasy point scored per game average, that's not getting it done, and that's what I love the volume, but I need more I need 21 points to get value on that 7,200. So I'm a little bit leery. I like the matchup. Sanders last week for Philadelphia did a nice job versus Miami. Miami coming off a big win, going to New York Jets. I'm really interested in Le'Veon Bell this week. It's just if he's 7,200, can I go up a little bit more and get Fournette, which I feel is a more consistent and safer floor. Because with Bell averaging 14.9 fantasy points per game, his floor is pretty low for $7,200. So I will have some exposure to him, and if you see, you can probably see the tendency that I have. I really like to target those running backs that get a lot of carries, touches, the high volume running backs. Next up, Aaron Jones for Green Bay. He's 6,700. He's a pivot off of the Green Bay passing game this week. I think Rodgers and Devontae Adams are going to get a lot of ownership. I think Jones might be a nice pivot off of that. And the thing that concerns me about Rodgers in the passing game is if Washington doesn't push Green Bay and Green Bay gets the running game going, then they don't need to put the ball in there a whole lot. Now to build up that lead, yeah, to get there, you can probably get it done. The scary thing about Aaron Jones is he's only averaging 16.5 touches per game, and in the last, he's only averaging 11.3 carries per game the last 4. That's what's scary, but he's very efficient. He's averaging 19.4 fantasy points per game. Washington's given up 25.9 fantasy points per game, which is a DVP of 21. 57% snap percentage in the last 4, and that's what I was talking about. The volume for him is scary, so it's kind of risky. Do you want to risk that he'll be efficient, or do you want to pass at that price? I like the price. if I could get 20 carries out of that and some receptions for Jones, because he can get it done in the passing game. He's done that this year, and he's had some really big games. Had a really big game against Dallas, and he's had 38 total red zone carries and touches. He's only averaging .288 points per snap, but I think I will use him. I always factor in ownership, but I will use him more if I see the Aaron Rodgers and the Devontae Adams type ownership really going up. I might pivot to Aaron Jones and take some shots with him. I got him in yellow right now. That just means he's on the fence, and I'll let you know when we do lineup building. He is in the player pool, and I'll let you know more when I see the ownership numbers tomorrow when we do lineup building. Next up is Josh Jacobs. Oakland is very much in the playoff hunt. Jacobs is getting most of the carries, but he is game script dependent. He can get phased out very easily, and that's the scary thing with him. He does average 19.67 touches per game, 16.2 fantasy points per game, and Tennessee's given up 25.6 fantasy points per game to the running back position, which is a DVP of 20. He's 55% snap percentage the last 4 games. He's had 41 red zone carries and touches. That's a lot, and his points per snap, .413 points per snap, is really high. I like Josh Jacobs a lot this week. I think there'll be a lot of ownership on Henry based on what Henry's done lately, but I like Oakland at home, and I think this is a really good matchup for him. The point spread on this game, Oakland's a 3-point home favorite with a game total of 46.5 points. That checks all the boxes for me. A small home favorite, so a close game. Oakland wants to give him the ball, and I like him. I like him a lot this week. Next, we scroll down, and I'm going to scroll so I can get the rest of these guys included here that you can see here on the bottom. Sony Michel, 5,600. He's averaging 16.08 touches per game, 9.7 fantasy points per game. Kansas City, their weakness is the run. They're giving up 32.6 fantasy points per game and have a DVP of 32. He's had 29% snap percentage in the last 4 games. That is a major warning sign. He's had 35 total red zone carries and targets, and his points per snap is .269, which is one of the lower ones. This game is, if New England attacks Kansas City's weakness and runs the ball and keeps Patrick Mahomes on the bench, it will be through Sony Michel and James White. He's got pretty low ownership right now, but he's very, very risky, and it's hard to trust him due to his volume. This 29% snap percentage the last 4 games. Obviously, the Patriots have lost 2 of their last 3 games, and the game script was more favorable to James White, which we'll get to here in a second. So, if you believe this game is going to be low scoring, which I actually don't, it's the highest total on the board at 49 points. New England's a 3-point home favorite, so they think it's going to be a close, high-scoring game. And the last couple games have been very high-scoring between these 2 teams. Last year, 1 game in New England and 1 game in Kansas City in the playoffs. So, a lot of offense. I probably won't get to him. I have him in yellow now because he does, on paper, he has the best matchup on the main slate against Kansas City. They give it up to the running back position, but I'm not sure I'm going to get there. Who I might be higher on is the guy right underneath him, James White. He's 5,500. He's only averaging 10 touches per game, 14.1 fantasy points per game. Same numbers against Kansas City there to give up 32.6 fantasy points per game and have a DVP of 32. He's 50% snap percentage and 27 red zone carries and reception targets. I'm sorry, and he has a .434, which is his numbers are the exact opposite of Michelle. But the game scripts lately have favored James White when they're behind, close game. They like to get White the ball out in the flats. He does get some carries. Had a really good game in his last game against against Houston. That was a really big game for him. They didn't get it done. They lost the game, but he's getting it. If it's a low scoring, grind it out, keep Mahomes on the bench, it's going to be Michelle. But if you believe, like I believe, that there's going to be some points in this game, Vegas thinks there's going to be some points in this game. It's 49-point game total, highest total on the board this week. You got to factor White into that. It's not hard to get value at 5,500, and he's a nice filler for me in the flex position. So I will have some exposure to these guys, but Michelle will be under a different build. White will actually, I want to stack this game, and there's all kinds of pieces that you can use to stack it. I like to stack the highest totals on the board, and that's one of the things that I focus on. So I will have some exposure to James White this week. Next up, Devontae Freeman is 5,400. Carolina is getting gashed by the running back position. There's all kinds of ways to stack this game as well. The game total is 47. Atlanta's a 3-point home favorite. This just screams that to get the running backs involved in this somehow. Like I said, there's all kinds of ways to stack this game. Freeman's average is 16.6 touches per game, only 13 fantasy points per game. But Carolina's given up 30.7 fantasy points per game to the running back position, which is 31 DVP. He's had, and remember he missed some time, he's had 29% snap percentage in the last 4, and I believe he missed 3 of those. He's had 17 red zone carries and targets, and his fantasy points per snap is very low at .198. I think he could be a more contrarian pick. Excuse me. There's going to be a lot of ownership go towards the Atlanta passing game, bringing it back with Christian McCaffrey. And one build to be contrarian might actually be the Carolina passing game. Risky Freeman, McCaffrey, and some other pieces. I believe this game will have a lot of scoring. It's a division game. These teams aren't really playing for anything except pride. And so I will have some exposure to him. I really like that price at 5,400. Doesn't take much to get value. And pretty much checks all the boxes for me. 3-point home favorite, high game total. So I will have some exposure to Devontae Freeman. Excuse me. And last is Madison. I have him in yellow. He's 4,500. Cook's coming off an injury, and they have proved when Cook was healthy that they don't mind using Madison. He does some cleanup duties late in the game. He's averaging 7.83 touches per game, 5.1 fantasy points per game, and Detroit is number 30 versus running back. They give up 30.2 fantasy points per game to the running back position. He's got 19% snap percentage last 4 games, but he's had 24 red zone carries and targets this year behind Cook, and he's averaging .369 fantasy points per snap. I will have him in a lot of lineups if something happens that Cook is ruled out. Now I know that'll be chalky, and everybody else will be on that too, but I really yeah, I don't mind having a couple chalky players in my lineup. That to me would be a free spot if Cooks is ruled out. So we always keep an eye on the injury reports, which I'll give you a reminder tomorrow too. The injury reports on Sunday at 11:30 for the 1 o'clock games and about 2:45 for the 4 o'clock games. But I have Madison in yellow just because I want to see the injury report and see the ownership. But he's definitely at that price if he gets the start. And even if he doesn't get the start with that high of a point spread, if they're going to build a lead like that, and Cooks is coming in banged up, they're going to give Madison more run. They're not going to run Cooks into the ground. It's just can you get the volume if they are they able to get that lead? Is Detroit going to fight back and keep this game close? The point spread, Minnesota is actually has one of the higher spreads on the or lines on the slate at 13 points. Game total is only 43.5 points, so they're not expecting Detroit to do much scoring. But he's a really interesting play. We got to watch ownership and watch the injury status as well. Now, as I always do, I will be paying attention to the ownership numbers, which I've been talking about, and I'll address these when we do the lineup building and putting the lineups together, and when I show you what I've done with my optimizer and all that tomorrow. So, recapping the running backs I have in my player pool for Week 14. Let's go back up here to the top. Christian McCaffrey at 10,300. Leonard Fournette at 7,800. Le'Veon Bell at 7,200. Aaron Jones, 6,700 in yellow right now. I'm on the fence with him. Josh Jacobs at 6,500. Sony Michel, 5,600. And James White, 5,500. I have those two in yellow. Devontae Freeman from Atlanta, 5,400. And Madison from Minnesota for 4,500. And I wanted to mention a few of these others. Like Dalvin Cook obviously has a really good matchup on paper versus Detroit, the same numbers that when I was talking about Madison. And he's averaging 22.58 touches per game, 21.42 fantasy points per game on paper. If he hadn't got hurt the other night, I would be more on Dalvin Cook. I want to see more. I want to see more from the Friday injury report if they're going to limit him at all. Because if they limit him getting at 9,500, that's 28 points for value. So that's what I'm concerned with. Some other ones here. Henry, he's been getting it done. His price is 8,200, so they've pretty much got him to where there's not much meat left on the bone with Henry as far as value is concerned. He's averaging 19.8 fantasy points per game. And he's getting it done. He's definitely had some big games lately. They're on the road in Oakland. He doesn't get targeted in the passing game, so that's a concern of mine with a running back, especially at $8,200. Chubb at 8,000, really good matchup versus Cincinnati in Cleveland, and Cleveland still has a mathematical chance of being in the playoffs. But there's a guy down here. I'm not sure if I had him listed. There he is. He's 6,600. Chubb is 8,000. Hunt is 6,600. That's what concerns me about Chubb. Since Hunt's been back, Chubb hasn't been getting as many targets. His snap percentage is 68%. Hunt's is 59%. And Hunt's been getting all the targets out of the backfield. Hunt got the touchdown last week. So I just try to stay away from the running back committees. So I don't have a lot of interest in Chubb in this game. It's the lowest total of the week at 40.5 points. So that's why I didn't have him. Alvin Kamara, just not a great matchup on paper. San Francisco, they do have a little bit of difficulty with running backs out of the backfield, but there's a lot of mouths to feed in that offense, and San Francisco, their defense is legit. And so at 7,000, I just don't want to have I don't want to have to need 20, 21, 22 points out of Alvin Kamara just to get value. And then that's the only ones that I really wanted to talk about. I haven't seen a max officially out yet. Yeah. So that about wraps up this video. I want to thank you guys for joining me. I encourage you to please drop any opinions or comments that you have below. I try to answer them all. If there's something that, like I said, that you want to see or something you think that I could add, might make this better, please, by all means, let me know and I'll see what I can do. Please share this video, like it, subscribe if you're not already a subscriber, hit that notification bell so you get notified when my next video posts. It really helps me out a ton. My subscribers have been trending upwards. A lot of you have mentioned that you thought I should have a lot more subscribers. I do too, because I've been getting a lot of viewers, which I really appreciate. So if you're not a subscriber, please go ahead and do that for me. It helps me out a ton. I'm trying to build this channel and make something really big out of it. I'll be back shortly to do my wide receiver video with another chart. I'll be posting that video right after this one. You can also follow me on Twitter at winningabout. And just a reminder about tomorrow, I'll be doing the tight end defense special teams combination video, and then the lineup building with the manual builds and optimizers using my player pool. Remember, these past 2 weeks, my player pool has had the players that you could have built the winning lineup to beat the lineup that won the Millie Maker for Draftkings. 2 weeks in a row, 4 out of 13. Not a bad investment for $20, $1 million. So I just use the Millie Maker as my measuring stick, and no, I haven't won it yet. My smile will be much different if I should win that. But I promise you, I'll be back to do this. I really want to do something with this channel. Again, thank you guys for joining me, and I'll see you real soon. My name is Ty Patton. This is all about winning daily fantasy sports.